Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us early. We are excited to kick off this 10th WSH Data Labs webinar. In the meantime, as we wait for more attendees to join, please take a moment to ensure that you check that your internet is stable, and feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat by sharing your name, organization, and where you are joining us from. And maybe one thing that you're excited to learn more about from this particular webinar. Thank you. We'll kickstart in 5 minutes. Thank you for the wait. Super excited to see some action in the chat. I'm not seeing a lot of introductions, but excited that our AI chat boxes are busy sharing notes in the chat. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our participants joining us from different parts of the world. From the WSH Data Labs team at Dev-Afrique and the entire webinar team at Dev-Afrique, GWOPA and ESAWAS. We hope that you're all doing well, and welcome to our 10th webinar in the Sanitation Data and Operation Management Systems series. Today we are excited to share some key learnings and deliverables from the WSH Data Labs work over the past couple of years, specifically focusing on our non-sewered sanitation initiatives. We have a couple of exciting outputs that we would be sharing, including presentation of key findings from our comprehensive non-sewered sanitation data system landscape report of sub-Saharan Africa, sharing the new data and operation management repository, which we're calling a tools mapping dashboard, and then spotlighting the terms of reference for the development of an NSS or non-sewered sanitation or on-site sanitation module in existing data and operation management systems within utilities across the region. A central theme today is that all of these valuable resources are there to enhance the work within the sector and to give us a good base to ride on for the different interventions that we are planning to either embark on or are already embarking on as stakeholders within the ecosystem as regards to WSH. And for further details, all of our resources are available on the WSH Data Labs website, which as we go along the webinar, we would be able to spotlight. We at Dev-Afrique are proud once again to partner with the Eastern and Southern African Water and Sanitation Regulators Association, ESAWAS, and the Global Water Operators Partnerships Alliance, GWOPA and the UN Habitat, to deliver this webinar series. And our goal remains to support local actors, governments, research institutes, regulators, utilities and municipalities, development partners, and donors in enhancing WSH data systems across sub-Saharan Africa. And in today's webinar, as mentioned, the key is to spotlight the non-sewered sanitation report. What are the key lessons, key findings, and recommendations? And then demonstrate and spotlight the data and operation management dashboard or the tools mapping dashboard, and present the overview of the non-sewered sanitation module terms of reference that was developed in collaboration with multiple regulators, utilities, and partners across the region. And then we would have a 5 minutes break just so that everyone could stretch, grab a cup of tea, water, and then we'd get back to our Q&A and then have our next steps, and then we would be closing. Just a note, reminder of our housekeeping Bruce. This webinar is being recorded, and we hope that everyone that is joining, by virtue of registering, consents to being recorded, and the recording would be shared with all the attendees after the webinar. And please note that your microphones are currently muted during the course of the presentation. However, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and we would take note of them and they would be asked during the Q&A. We would also be activating your microphones during the break, just so that once you're back for the Q&A sessions, you'd be free to raise your hand, and I, as your moderator, would be able to accord you the opportunity to ask your questions. And we also know that there may be instances where internet may be shaky and not stable. Feel free to put all your comments, questions in the chat. We hope that we would have a very fruitful and engaging webinar, and look forward to the interaction in the chat as we progress. Just a quick note, and I think for our regular attendees, this has become a song that we know. But just to quickly recap that Dev-Afrique has been implementing a sanitation data system strengthening project across sub-Saharan Africa with support from the Gates Foundation. And the key outputs have been to improve understanding of data system strengthening best practices across the sector, from other sectors like health sector, to improve understanding of non-sewered sanitation data systems across municipalities and utilities in sub-Saharan Africa, to support the development of a data maturity assessment index with ESAWAS and Athena. And I think there would be some announcements during the course of the week around this, and then a landscape and development of an inventory of tools, which, again, just to note that these are data and operation management systems that are being used to manage data for water and sanitation across sub-Saharan Africa, with some spotlights from South Asia just as best practices for cross-regional learning. And then the last bit was to provide technical support and facilitate cross-learning and sharing insights across the sector. This webinar has been a major output as part of the spotlighting of different data and operation management systems that are used across sub-Saharan Africa. And as mentioned earlier, our aim remains to promote shared learning and best practices to enhance the use of sanitation data systems in a bid to drive performance management and improve service delivery at the utility and municipality. At Dev-Afrique, we believe in a pyramid approach, where local data systems ultimately cascade into regulatory and national and global data systems that end up informing the practice for the sector. And our webinar continues to target multiple stakeholders, including utilities, regulators, municipalities, development partners, donors, governments, line ministries, and other stakeholders like academia and the private sector. And it provides an opportunity for cross-learning, and that's why we encourage you to have a very interactive chat, just so that we could also all learn from each other. Our webinar has been running for the last couple of months, and we have partnered with ESAWAS and GWOPA, and the series has spotlighted data and operation management systems from various parts of sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia to close the data gaps, tackle operational efficiencies, and build sustainable and data-driven sanitation systems. And we have attracted over 900 participants during the course of the webinar, representing over 40 countries. And we've spotlighted 10 data and operation management systems, or tools, with the examples of the partner logos at the bottom: NWASCO in Zambia, Interwater, the LSP, WSREB, EWURA, EDAMS, Sanitracker, Nakuru's data systems, the IMIS in South Asia. And so we continue to drive cross learning through this webinar. In a bid to enhance the outputs and the work of the project supported by the Gates Foundation, Dev-Afrique transitioned into a program called WSH Data Labs. And the aim and mission of the WSH Data Labs is basically to enhance public data systems, drive informed decision making, optimize performance management, and improve sanitation service delivery across the region with practical, scalable, and impactful data solution. We hope that using this program, we could collaborate with multiple stakeholders, including all of you that are on this call, to co-create data system strengthening solutions, to champion best practices around strengthening our data systems, and promote knowledge exchange. We know that with the current global trends, the use of data becomes very critical in driving evidence for impact and building investment cases for all the interventions that we are implementing. And so this becomes a pivotal program to ensure that we move forward collaboratively as a sector. Today's webinar is the 10th webinar in the series, and we would be, again, just a recap, spotlighting the Non-Sewered Sanitation Data Systems Report, exploring the Data and Operation Management Systems Dashboard, and hearing more about the terms of reference for building or developing a non-sewered sanitation module within existing data and operation management systems across utilities. And again, please feel free to connect and network in the chats. Just a reminder, this webinar is under the WSH Data Labs umbrella, which is an initiative of Dev-Afrique in collaboration with ESAWAS and GWOPA. We also want to spotlight that ESAWAS continues to drive engagement through the ESAWAS Engage platform. And so if you're not on the Engage platform, feel free to join the platform. And then GWOPA runs different COPs, communities of practice, to drive focused conversations on specific critical areas of the WSH sector. And one of those communities of practice is the sanitation community of practice. And feel free to join the communities of practice on the GWOPA platform. Coming to the moment we have all been waiting for, we would be diving straight into the call of today's webinar, and we are thrilled to share significant progress on all the various outputs. And to take us through the presentation today, I am your moderator, 𝗀𝗲𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁 today's session. And I am joined by my colleagues, Grace Wambui from Kenya, who is an advisor for water and sanitation at Dev-Afrique with multiple years of experience within the sector across the region. And then we have 𝗦𝗫𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁 with multiple vast experience. And then we have 𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗵, who's an advisor at Dev-Afrique and has championed a lot of data system strengthening initiatives in Zambia with Lusaka Water. And so super excited to have this team present and share some of the key learnings and insights. And without further ado, I would pass it on to Grace to kickstart with the presentation of the non-sewered sanitation data systems landscape. Grace, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Shuko. I am grateful to be here to be presenting this chapter of the now on non-sewered sanitation data systems. My name, rightly introduced by Shuko, is 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. I'm a water and sanitation consultant based in Kenya, Nairobi, and I was privileged to be part of the team that did this assessment on non-sewered sanitation data systems across sub-Saharan Africa. So this study or this assessment was done across 10 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, where basically we were supposed to look at the status, the challenges, and provide recommendations on the data systems, specifically for the newest kid on the block, called the non-sewered sanitation data systems. Yeah. So next, Shuko. So this project, the main goal for this assessment was basically to improve the public data systems for effective decision making and performance management for service sanitation delivery at municipal and utility levels. So we were doing the assessment so that then the end goal being that once we highlight the status, the challenges, and give recommendations, the utilities and the municipalities at the local level then would have a way out, or they would have a starting point, basically in terms of investments, in terms of improvements, with the end goal of improving on their service delivery. Yeah. So I would say that's the key thing. And also, of course, having done that, our understanding of where the data systems were, of course, improved. And then one would wonder, why is it that these non-sewered sanitation data systems matter? Of course, at the high level, that is at the ministry levels, the reason why the data systems matter is because they provide the evidence-based decision making for investments, be it in water or sanitation. That's basically at policy and planning. So at the ministerial level, there's not much you can do without data. This, of course, helps. It informs your decisions as a ministry. Then at the local level, it like I had indicated from the other slide, is the main thing of investing in robust data systems is basically to help with the improvement of the service delivery, with the, of course, the major goal of the SDG goal being to basically ensure that the universal access and to sanitation for all. Then, of course, when it comes to the climate resilience, when you have data, then you're able to also track the impact of climate change on sanitation systems. And then with data, you're also able to strengthen regulatory frameworks and performance monitoring. Of course, like I've indicated, our project was local based, so it was more at the utility municipal levels, but we understand that these data systems then feed into the upper data systems at the ministerial and regulatory level. So that is why we are saying then they would, when you add up, when you go high up the hierarchy, then of course you're informing better policy planning, and of course regulatory frameworks are then established. Yeah. And another thing as to why these data systems matter is globally, 46% of the population actually rely on non-sewered sanitation. So you could see that almost half of the world global population then rely on non-sewered sanitation. Then in sub-Saharan Africa, where this project was based, greater, or rather more than 80% of the population actually rely on non-sewered sanitation. Very little, actually, I think it is reported around 16% of the population in sub-Saharan Africa is the only one that is relying on sewered. So without having an idea of where we are at in terms of data systems for non-sewered sanitation, then there's not much would claim that we are doing, because the larger population then relies on non-sewered sanitation data, and it is important that we know where we are at in terms of data to inform our decision making. Yeah. So I would say then that is why Dev-Afrique, supported by the Gates Foundation, then took it upon themselves to do this landscape assessment of the non-sewered sanitation data systems across utilities and municipalities in the 10 sub-Saharan Africa, with the key aim being to basically illuminate on the existing challenges, the status, and of course, then I also identify the best practices that are also happening, because there are some utilities and municipalities that are quite ahead of the others. So then it was also, despite the fact that the challenges sort of like outweigh the gains, or rather the progress that we've made, but there are some utilities and municipalities that we also illuminated light on, so that then they can be a good example to the other utilities. Yeah. So how did we do this assessment? That is the non-sewered sanitation data assessment. So we had methodology. So of course we had an assessment framework. So we developed a data value pipeline that had been used previously by Dev-Afrique in 2022 to conduct a geospatial value pipeline. This was of course now to help us map the critical elements of a data system. Then after identifying those critical elements, the questions that then were subjected to our key informants were based on that key elements of a data system. So, of course, after we came up with the assessment framework, we had to start somewhere. So we started the desk-based review of the articles that we could find, then including the previous reports, the stakeholder reports, and websites. Then next was, of course, now the meeting of the stakeholders across the 10 Sub-Saharan Africa from different levels, be it ministries, regulators, utilities, and municipalities. Then the other thing, after we came up with the draft report, we had to do a multi-layer review of that report to ensure that the final output met the quality that then we should be presenting, or we are presenting to you. Yeah. So like I've indicated, our assessment was based on a framework or a pipeline. I prefer to use the name pipeline because a lot of us as sanitation experts are also the ones also dealing on the other side, the water. So it's water and sanitation sector. So the name pipeline is closer home. So when you think of data, the data system, it follows the same pipeline that you'd use when generating water, basically when you are dealing with water, from abstraction all the way to consumption. So the first step that you look at is, first of all, look at what decision do you want to make. Then when you get to ask yourself what decision do you want to make, then it will inform you the kind of data that you need to go collect. So that is why for us, number one here in the assessment methodology, in the data value chain was the key thing. What decision do we want to make using this data? Then the next thing was, once we had that question and we answered that question, we're able now to tell, then where should I get this data from? So that's the generation. So at that point, that is when you look at the types of data, that is the forms of data that are to be collected. Where is this data being collected from? Where is the data source? What are the tools that you're going to use for collecting this data? Then what is the procedure? What is the process of collecting this data? And then after you collect this data, where are you going to store it? Then the third step is basically analysis. So after you collect, then there is the analysis. So at the analysis, of course, you have to do data validation, data cleaning, then you analyze it. So how is this data analyzed? Do we have technologies? Do we have softwares for data analysis, or are we just using the basic softwares? Then visualization. Are we able to visualize the results of our analysis? Or because of course with visualization, then you're able to get better pictures, yeah? Then when it comes to operationalization, after we've done all this, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it? Is it for reporting? Is it for accountability? Is it for planning and performance management? Or what are the other data use cases? Then we understand that this value pipeline, the data value pipeline, we operate within an ecosystem. So this ecosystem means that other than just this main pipeline, there are other factors within the ecosystem that then make this data value pipeline operate successfully. So effectively. So some of these things are data governance, the data quality, data integration, data transparency, access and sharing, usability, human resource, of course, the capacities, coordination among the key sectors, because sanitation in most countries, as you'll come to see later, it cuts across the water, health, education ministries. So is there coordination among these three ministries, or whatever number of ministries that are involved within the sanitation area? And then, of course, financing. So all these are aspects that we also put into consideration when we were doing the evaluation. So like I've indicated, we were dealing with 10 countries, like well illustrated in this. This is the visualization, of course. So in Rwanda, we dealt with the regulator, who is RURA. We also dealt with the utility, who is WSAC, and the Association of MTS. Then, of course, Nigeria, you can see there were quite a number of institutions that we dealt with, including the regulator, LASAMO, Environmental Health Council of Nigeria, all that. And then, of course, DRC, Zambia, we spoke to a number of utilities, including Lusaka, Western, Southern, and of course, the Ministry of Health. And then South Africa, we spoke with the Department of Water and Sanitation. Then when we got in Uganda, we spoke to the regulator, who is the Water Utility Regulation Department. We spoke with KCCA, we spoke with National Water, and then the Ministry of Health. Then Ethiopia, we spoke with the Ministry of Water. Kenya, we spoke with the Ministry of Water and Sanitation. We spoke with the regulator, who is WSREB. We spoke with the Association of Water Service Providers. We spoke with Kisumu Water, Malindi, and Nakuru. And in fact, we even showcased some tools like the one from Nakuru. Same thing with Lusaka, we showcased the tool that they're using for the Lusaka sanitation system. Then in Tanzania, we spoke with 𝗪𝘰𝗻, and I think recently we also showcased a tool from from Tanzania called 𝗪𝘰𝗻, and then Lilongwe. So just when we're on this slide, I would want to mention something. As we were speaking to these institutions and these stakeholders across these 10 countries, we came across some tools that we felt were very important or were doing quite a good job in either in regulation or even at the utility/municipality level. So you'll come later to see that my colleague Namaka should be presenting a dashboard where we now went deeper, learned about these tools, and then we put them on a dashboard where we've been holding webinar series basically to discuss more, so that then this enables the utilities and municipalities it enables a cross-learning between these institutions, so that if there's a tool that is doing well in terms of probably spatial mapping or probably sanitation services mapping, and it is in Zambia or Uganda, then there's no need for reinventing the wheel when something is working in one country. So that has really come in handy. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so like I said, the main objective of this assessment was basically to understand the status. First of all, the status, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and then of course we gave the recommendations. So having the data value pipeline in mind, I'll just give a highlight of what the status is, and then of course later, as I end my presentation, I'll direct you to where you can find the more elaborate and comprehensive report that we published as the main deliverable of this exercise. So under the landscape status, the key findings were that most utilities have actually not conducted baseline mapping. What do I mean? What I mean is most utilities and municipalities across sub-Saharan Africa have majorly been concentrating on seaward sanitation. That is the network sanitation, but with very little focus on the non-sewered sanitation, because for most countries, it's not really been within their domain. You find that it's a domain that is shared by many, and you know what they say, that when something is shared by many, then accountability lacks. So, like for the cases of Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia, there has been a shift where now it's been clearly indicated by the regulators and by the ministries that actually the non-sewered sanitation now falls within the domain of these water and sanitation utilities. And by that shift, then you've also observed that some utilities have already taken steps towards now conducting baseline mapping of the online sanitation facilities, on-site sanitation facilities. And by on-site, of course, I mean pit latrines, septic tanks, and all that. Yes? All other modes of sanitation besides the networked seaward sanitation. So we came across utilities like Kampala, municipalities like KCCAs, utilities like Lusaka, Nakuru, and also a lot of the utilities in Tanzania have done the baseline mapping, but the more, like the larger number, like in Kenya, we have over 90 utilities. Probably 5 have done baseline mapping, but the rest have not, or they're just at the initial stages of mapping the on-site sanitation facilities. And without data, then you cannot manage that which you don't know. So this is a very essential step that most utilities and municipalities are yet to do. And we hope that the line ministries and policymakers can take note, because also we understand that one of the key limitations is funding. It's quite a comprehensive exercise that needs a lot of funding. Then the other point was that most utilities basically use basic analytics for analysis. By that I mean utilities, you find that yes, they've collected data, but when it comes to the analysis bit, they just analyzing using Excel, and there's not much you can gather from Excel. So of course there's a limitation. There's what Excel can help you to do, but there are also limitations. Then non-sewered sanitation data is not fully mainstreamed into the utility decision-making processes. And this is true because with non-sewered sanitation just being a new kid in the block, you find that a lot of this data then is just being collected on the sidelines. It is being actually collected as on project based. So it's not really mainstreamed into the utilities' main processes in terms of decision making, in terms of data collection, even in terms of data infrastructure. So it is collected on the side, stored on the side, meaning that even the decisions that then this data would help in making are also not fully comprehensively absorbed by the utilities. It's more of like a side job, facilitated through projects. Yeah. Then there are no existing standard operating procedures to guide data system principles. So by this I mean that in most cases you find that in an ideal data system ecosystem, there are the SOPs besides, or rather, that would help in guiding data collection, and use and all that. So there are no standard operating procedures currently that help in non-sewered sanitation data principles. Then the next slide, please. Yeah, so the presentation I've done, the previous slide on a holistic scale. Now, when we follow the data value chain, where we start with data collection, analysis, and then of course use, at the data generation, which is collection, most of us use collection. What are the key points? So is that at that point, there's the infancy of non-sewered sanitation data collection methodologies. There's a lack of baseline and sewered sanitation data. There's inadequate political will. We have very weak data capacities. Then, of course, is a fragmentation, like I've explained previously, of data NSS data collection, as well as fragmentation in the NSS data storage systems. And then there's limited regulation and reporting frameworks, and then poor data quality, and then inadequate compliance monitoring. Yeah. So next slide, please. So under data analysis, like I've said, there lacks automated data validation tools, and a lot of these things, both generation and analysis, are project driven. So you find like maybe there's a Bill and Melinda Gates project somewhere. There's probably a WhatsApp project somewhere. There's many other partners. So who are driving the non-sewered sanitation and analysis. So you find that data is being collected and analyzed in piecemeals, not holistic, because it's not yet been taken up or absorbed as a key area within the utilities and municipalities. Then, of course, like I've highlighted in the previous slide, there's insufficient skilled personnel when it comes to analysis. And then, of course, again, the issue of the isolated systems. So we don't have interoperable data systems. And then there's underutilization of GIS capabilities, inaccurate GIS mapping, financial constraints, and then, of course, absence of non-sewered sanitation systems guiding principles. Then next slide, please. When it comes to use, so if we're not doing well in the previous two steps, you can imagine what would be happening now in this third step. So again, like I said, there's fragmentation of non-sewered sanitation data, meaning it is not, you see, the way we are moving into the integrated, from the single isolated way of doing things, that I have my financial and billing data separate, I have my HR data separate from, let's say, technical data. We are moving from the isolated systems into the integrated systems through the ERP. So you find that one of the key shortcomings that we found is that NSS data is still very seen as a new kid on the block. So it's not really been taken up and as part of the data that utilities are making in decision making. Yet, when it comes to investments of sanitation, we know it's a ladder. So you move from on-site to off-site. How then do you make decisions if you have no complete picture? And complete picture means that you should have data both on the two sets, that is the non-sewered sanitation data and the sewered sanitation, that then you're moving people up the ladder. So you find that data on non-sewered sanitation is actually isolated in utilities and municipalities, meaning when it comes to decision making and the use of this data in the decision making or in service delivery, in helping the utilities improve on their service delivery, then it's not really considered much. Then, of course, there's a limited funding, political interference, then inconsistent data quality, and then, of course, it's a limited monitoring, evaluation, and learning frameworks and dedicated units. You find that a lot of the people that are working on this non-sewered sanitation data are actually ICT-based people. We don't have people who are actually data people or monitoring or evaluation and learning departments or units within utilities that then take up this kind of data works or data needs within the utilities or municipalities. So this is done by people who have other main roles within the institution, and it's done as a side job. So we lack then the capacities and the dedication to ensure that rather than just collecting, we are also using that MB, that is monitoring, evaluation, and learning frameworks, to continue improving on our data systems and data processes within utilities and municipalities. Yeah. So what are the opportunities that exist that then would drive impact for non-sewered sanitation data systems across sub-Saharan Africa? So some of the key opportunities that we highlighted and that we came across and are very well elaborated on in the report is that we need to standardize data protocols. So, of course, this would really be helped, and the key stakeholder that we see would really help in this area is the regulators. So, of course, defining the KPIs, we take note that there are some regulators within the region that are quite ahead on this, but there are some that will still need to improve on their works. That is by introducing the comprehensive sanitation KPIs. Then, of course, guidelines around data collection, policies and regulation, so that then there's uniform collection and reporting standards across board. Then when you have these uniform standards and across board, then the comparison and the reliability of data then can easily be done, so that we are comparing likes against likes, so that, say, in a country, we know that if you go to utility A and utility B, then if you're defining a certain KPI, it is across board, it is uniform. Making sure, then of course, this would ensure that even the reports that come for sector reporting and all that, then we are reporting over the same thing. And that when you talk about non-sewered sanitation KPIs, when utility A talks of X, then X is also X in a utility B, so that there's that uniformity in understanding and also in use of these KPIs. Then, of course, we also need to invest in digital infrastructure. So we need to allocate resources towards digital tools and platforms that can streamline data management processes. By this, I mean, there hasn't been a focus when it comes to investments in digital tools and platforms. So you find that a lot of these utilities, when it comes to data collection analysis, they're using manual ways of data collection, and of course would save on a lot of capacities, a lot of time and resources if you were to digitize the tool, so that, and even in terms of errors, if you would be able to digitize the tool such that there's nowhere where there's a manual process along this data value pipeline, then of course this would ensure that the reliability and accuracy of data is highly improved for, of course, the end pool of service delivery. Then there's a capacity building. We need to improve capacities of personnel in data management and analysis. Then there's integrated monitoring systems. And then, of course, we need to build a strong investment case for non-sewered sanitation data systems. So I think I would say mine was quite a fast presentation, but that should not deceive you. The report is quite comprehensive, and you can see there's a QR code there. So if you want to access the report, it's given the status of all these different countries, all these different utilities, where they are at when it comes to non-sewered sanitation. It's given the challenges and also comprehensively across the sanitation value chain, step by step, what is the status, what is the challenge, and what are the recommendations, starting from, of course, containment, going all the way to emptying and transportation, and then, of course, treatment. What are the data challenges, data status? What are the challenges, status, and opportunities for data systems across board? So should you be interested in finding out more and seeing more of this, then kindly scan through that QR code and you'll be able to access the report. And then, like I'd previously said, when you were doing this documentation, we're doing these interviews across the Sub-Saharan Africa, we came across tools that we felt were doing a very good job in terms of collecting, in terms of service delivery and both regulation, collecting data and reporting data, both at the local level and at the regulatory level. So one of the things that we also decided was to showcase these tools across, or rather through the webinar series that I know most of you have been attending. So I'll be handing the next session to my colleague Nnamaka, so that then she can talk more about the tools dashboard, which is basically a manifestation of all these tools that we've been showcasing for the last 1 year. So thank you, and over to you, my colleague Nnamaka.
Thank you very much, Grace, for that insightful presentation. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from wherever you're joining us today. My name is 𝗦𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and I will take us through the WSH Tools Map dashboard. So if you recall from an earlier slide that was presented, one of Dev-Afrique's contributions towards the Sanitation Data System Strengthening Project in Sub-Saharan Africa was to landscape and develop an inventory of successful WSH tools in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. So South Asia was added to this mapping exercise to capture best practices from mature WSH data systems that are implemented in settings that are very similar to those you would find in Sub-Saharan Africa. Like Grace mentioned earlier, we identified a lot of these tools during the Non-Sewered Sanitation Public Data Systems Landscape Assessment exercise, where we had follow-up conversations with stakeholders to find out more about the functionalities and capabilities of these tools and how they are driving informed decision-making in the different contexts where they are used. So this particular mapping exercise was born out of necessity to address a key challenge that we've noticed in the Sub-Saharan African WSH sector. And that challenge is that WSH stakeholders often struggle to access and learn about existing data systems. So I'm going to pose a question to you, the audience, and I just want you to take a mental note of your answer in 10 seconds. The question is, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about optimizing, adapting, or building data and operations management systems in the WSH sector? In 10 seconds, please make a mental note of your answer. Great. So I cannot speak for everyone that's gathered here today, but I want to believe that for a lot of us, the thoughts that comes to mind is, what tools actually exist? What tools are my peers using? And these peers could be other utilities, municipalities, regulatory bodies, or even partners. What are they using that have proven effective for them in their different contexts? So now that you've identified the kind of information you'd like to have, how would you normally go about getting this information? First, you can make countless calls to connections in organizations. You could also just spend a lot of time going through reports and partner websites, hoping to find information that's relevant to what you're looking for. You could also just try something new, build a system from scratch, cross your fingers and hope for the best. You can attend workshops, conferences, or summits that sometimes have sessions that are dedicated to WSH data systems. And finally, you can travel across the continent from one African country to another African country, or even to several other African countries, scouting for effective WSH data systems and learning about how you can adapt them to your own context. At the end of the day, what this boils down to is that for the longest time, utilities, municipalities, and regulators have operated in silos, each navigating their own data challenges, experimenting with different systems, and reinventing the wheel, often without visibility into what others are doing. So for a lot of us, the data system solutions we are looking for might already exist, but this lack of visibility and awareness within the sector has caused us to expend resources on non-essential activities that could have otherwise been diverted to activities that would have been more productive or impactful. So to solve this particular challenge, we came up with three main outputs. First is the webinar series, which we've been running since last year. Second is the learning briefs that accompany each webinar. And then for the third output, we consolidated all the information we had gathered on these effective WSH data systems being used across Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia into a centralized platform to provide stakeholders with a holistic view of what tools are driving informed decision-making and enhancing service delivery, performance monitoring, and performance management. So this centralized platform is the WSH Tools Map dashboard, which we've launched. It's an interactive dashboard that enables WSH stakeholders to access, explore, and learn about existing data systems. The dashboard has four main goals. First, it increases visibility. As I mentioned earlier, it provides a centralized view of existing data and operations management systems. It also promotes shared learning because The digital transformation journey that a lot of us are planning on embarking on or are already embarking on have already been worked by some of our peers. So they already have a list of things to completely avoid and best practices to adopt. By learning from each other and learning from our experiences, we can avoid the occurrence of duplication and inefficiencies within the sector. The dashboard also supports decision-making by offering valuable insights to utilities, municipalities, and regulators that help them select and implement the right data system solutions for their unique context. And finally, the dashboard fosters collaboration by encouraging synergies between regulators, service providers, and development partners. This dashboard is not just a catalog. It's a living, dynamic resource that fosters visibility, knowledge exchange, and informed decision-making. The dashboard provides several offerings to stakeholders that has helped streamline the process of finding, comparing, and checking what core functionalities each data system covers. The main functionalities of the dashboard include the ability for users to search for existing watch data systems based on different filters. You can search based on application level. Are you looking for a tool that's implemented at the national, regulatory, or utility/municipality level? You can also search by region, West Africa, South Africa, Southeast Asia, for example, and then subsequently by country. You can search by tool purpose. Are you looking for a tool that's client-facing? Is it a planning tool? Is it a performance monitoring tool, etc.? You can search by subsector. The tool you're looking for, is it a water-only tool, a sanitation-only tool, or an integrated water and sanitation tool? And finally, you can search by tool type. Are you looking for a tool that's fit for purpose or one that's off the shelf? In addition to searching by filters, you can also just type in the name of the system. So if you already know what it is you want to get more information about, you type in the name into the dashboard, and if it is captured in the dashboard, it pops up. The dashboard also allows users to have access to more in-depth information. So based on the filters you applied and the systems that are populated, you have access to the tool description, contact information. So this can be in the form of the email address of the tool owner. If the tool itself has a dedicated website, the website link is also included. But if that's not available, the website link to the tool owner's website is included. You also have access to learning resources. This can take the form of recordings of the webinar, learning briefs that we developed for that tool, or any other documentation that's relevant to that particular tool. And finally, you have access to the critical success factors. So those are the CSFs. The critical success factors are the evaluation criteria that we use to assess each tool. These are those things that utilities, municipalities, and regulators must achieve for them to ensure sustainable service provision in their service areas. The critical success factors for the utility/municipality are divided into 4 broad categories, which are now further divided into smaller subcategories. These broad categories are technical, commercial, financial, and institutional strengthening. The critical success factors or evaluation criteria for the regulator are divided into 3 broad categories, and these are quality of service KPIs, economic efficiency KPIs, and operational sustainability KPIs. Moving on, users can also compare 2 watch data systems to identify which critical success factors are being fulfilled. You can make this comparison on a tabular format or via a geographical format. You can also compare 2 tools within the same level, but not across different levels. So for example, you can compare X utility tool versus Y utility tool, but you cannot compare a utility tool versus a regulatory tool because the critical success factors are not the same. Users can also export the data from their screens for further review with other stakeholders, and they can use the information to also build investment cases as to why their organizations should adapt a particular data system or even improve the functionalities of the systems they already have in existence. Now, these last 2 points are new features that we just added to the dashboard. Users can actively expand the knowledge base by requesting to add newly identified data systems. At the moment, we've mapped out 12 successful watch data tools across sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. But as time goes on, we expect this number to increase. If you as a user have any experience with a tool or you're aware of any tool that would be a good fit for the dashboard, but is not currently listed, you can add the system to the dashboard by clicking on the Add New Tool button, filling the form, and then submitting it to us. When we receive the information, we will review on the admin end, and if it's approved, it is automatically added to the dashboard. And you as a user also get a notification that the system was approved and is now visible on the dashboard. Finally, users can now easily share direct links to tools across social media such as LinkedIn, email, and other online platforms to boost visibility and drive engagement. In summary, we see this dashboard as more than just a tool. We see it as a movement towards shared learning, collaboration, and innovation in the water and sanitation sector. So on your end as the audience, what can you do next? What are some next steps for you? First, we encourage you to visit the Tools Map dashboard. You can visit this dashboard via the link toolsmap.wshdata.labs.com, and you can also scan the QR code on your screens right now to get there. We just encourage you to explore the dashboard, play around with the filters, see what's possible, and also see what's available. We've also included a user guide within the dashboard that provides some background information into the dashboard. It also gives you more comprehensive descriptions of the different critical success factors that were used to evaluate each tool. And finally, it gives you a step-by-step guide on how to go about using the various functionalities of the tool. We'd also encourage you to contribute your knowledge. Again, if you have experience with a system that's a good fit for the dashboard but not currently listed, please feel free to reach out to us and share with us. Finally, please connect with the community. The contact details of the tool owners are within the dashboard. Please reach out to them and other users to learn from their experiences and tap into their wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for your attention. We hope to, at the end of this webinar session, we hope to see more traffic and engagement on the website and more tools added to the dashboard. I will now pass it over to my colleague 𝗀𝗻𝗄 to take us through the Non-Sewered Sanitation Data System module TOR that we developed in collaboration with WASH stakeholders. This particular document is a response to one of the recommendations we made in the landscape assessment report, which is to integrate non-sewered sanitation data into broader utility and municipality ERP systems. Thank you once more for your attention. Over to you, 𝗀𝗻𝗄.
Thanks very much, Namaka, for that wonderful introduction. Yes, so as I've been introduced, my name is 𝗀𝗻𝗄. I work as a water supply and sanitation consultant based in Lusaka. I'll be taking you through the standardized non-sewered sanitation systems module terms of reference that we developed as part of the Dev-Afrique initiative, of course, which is aimed at making sure that NSS data systems can provide informed decision making and also improve performance management and also improve service delivery in the utilities. So I think we all agree that NSS data systems provide crucial and also help inform policy and also decision making as well as planning, including resource allocation. So as part of this initiative, Dev-Afrique, under its continuous support to provide technical support and also facilitate cross-learning and insights with regards to data systems across sub-Saharan Africa, we thought of developing a standardized terms of reference that would inform utilities who are looking into developing or rather improving their existing NSS data systems. And I think the background to this is the fact that based on the outcomes of the NSS landscape assessment that we had from GRACE, the main results or the main outcome was that most of the non-sewered sanitation data systems across the region are weak and also fragmented. And of course, this, as Grace earlier alluded to, leads to a lot of inefficiencies in terms of service delivery. And also we hate the fact that the absence of robust data systems also is hindering, of course, project programming as well as investment programming to ensure that what investments are being put into the sector are going to yield maximum impact on the ground. Yes, so based on that background, really the terms of reference was put together to provide like a framework that would inform utilities and also municipalities in sub-Saharan Africa to develop NSS data systems that, of course, speak to the different needs across the sanitation service chain, but also that are going to make sure that we provide a framework that can be customized and updated to meet the specific needs and also requirements of this of the utility or this utility operates. Yeah, so to come up with these terms of reference, we followed a certain process, and the first thing that we did was to convene a stakeholder workshop in October of 2024, which was attended by selected utilities and municipalities from sub-Saharan Africa, I think from countries like Tanzania, Zambia, Kenya, and Uganda. And also we had ESAWAS as part of that workshop, and then we also had a number of development partners, as well as system developers from the region, like Smart People Africa and Hydrocom, who are the developers of the EDAM system. And this workshop was convened, of course, with the objective of making sure that, one, we define the critical NSS decision points, as well as key performance indicators that would inform service improvement and also service efficiency delivery within the utilities. Then also define NSS data system components. Of course, what components the system should be able to use, of course, that speak to the requirements service delivery. And of course, I developed a framework for non-sewered sanitation data systems module. Of course, that will detail how the system should function, and also the different requirements and KPIs is supposed to produce, and also data points that's supposed to be collected. And then, based on the outputs and inputs from this workshop, as a team, we put together all the insights from the stakeholders, and then we drafted a draft terms of reference, of course, that comprised mainly NSS data systems module specification table, which of course goes into driving or spelling out the details of the different components that the systems are supposed to have, and also the different data sources and also the functionalities that part of the draft generic NSS data systems module, the development of the overall NSS data systems or modules. And then after this draft was put together, we shared this draft tour with wider stakeholders, of course, including the participants of the workshop, and also other interested stakeholders that we've been working with. We received submissions on their review, and also
Kapanda, we are losing you. Could you kindly turn off your video so that
together
we have more
and
bandwidth?
Then we went into finalizing the terms of reference, of course, by incorporating the feedback that we received from the stakeholders, and then we finalized it, and then this is what we are finally presenting to you today. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Kindly just turn off video so that we save on bandwidth.
Yeah, I've turned it off, so I hope you can hear me clearly now.
Yes, we can.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, thank you. Yeah, so like I was saying, after the feedback from the stakeholders, went over ahead to finalize the terms of reference, of course, which we are presenting to you today, and also it's been as well uploaded on the WSH Data Labs website. You can access it for further details and also looking into it. Then, of course, yeah, this is just some of the pictures from the workshop that we did to develop the terms of reference, just showing the different participants, and also, of course, illustrating the discussions that were going on within the room. Yeah, so as Ada mentioned, of course, the overall objectives of the terms of reference itself was just to make sure that we develop a framework that will be able to guide utilities and municipalities across sub-Saharan Africa in the development of NSS data systems module. But also within that framework, we made sure that we embed in it a comprehensive M&E framework with key decisions and also KPIs that will, of course, going to contribute or improve in terms of reporting from the utilities in terms of access to improved sanitation services, and also the impact that specific interventions and programs on access to service sanitation are making within their locality. Then, of course, the other objective, of course, is to ensure that we drive the integration of this system, both horizontal and vertical, with other systems that the utility is using within its service offering. So this is, of course, systems that are related, for example, to water supply and also sewerage, for a set of compressed reporting in terms of the utilities activities. But also we made sure that the system is also able to be integrated to other external systems for, of course, important partners or key stakeholders that play a key role in sanitation service delivery, such as the regulators, the municipal councils or Ministry of Health in terms of maybe integrating with health wash-related data. Then, of course, the other objective is to make sure that we're able to design a system structure by implementing an updated database or database structure that will be able to accommodate non-Sewered sanitation data specifically. I think, like we heard from the presentation that Chris gave, I think there are specific issues related to data collection and how it's stored. So if you are able to improve that, we need to be able to make sure that we redesign the data system structures within the utilities to be able to accommodate NSS data as well. Then, of course, in addition as well, the other objective is to make sure that we then design or rather create a comprehensive module that will be able to assist the utility or the municipality to manage a service delivery across the sanitation service chain. So, of course, from containment, emptying and transportation, treatment and reuse across the entire service chain, the module should be able to assist in terms of service delivery management. Then, of course, the development of the system itself, and also, of course, deployment, and also making sure that this system is replicable, scalable, and also it's able to be interoperable with other parallel systems that are being used within the utility as well as external partners. But also overall it should be user-centric. That means it should be able to be used by the different players within the service chain. So from the service providers themselves, for example, private service providers, the utility inspectors, sanitation inspectors, data collectors in terms of maybe billing and stuff like that. Yeah, so when it comes to the specific activities that are being suggested or that the TIORA is trying to spell out, I think the first activity is to have like a preparatory phase where the utility together with the system developer will be able to start with having detailed discussions and also consultations to really gather the specific requirements and also be able to spell out the system definition requirements document that would then guide or rather form a base upon which the system itself is going to be developed. And after you spell out those system requirements and definitions, of course, the next task is to make sure that you update your existing database and also database registry to make sure that they will be able to accommodate non-Sewered sanitation data. But beyond that, we also need to ensure that we carry out a comprehensive evaluation and also validation of the existing NSS data that the utility might have at that particular point or that they might have in their possession. So this might be either some data that's already digitized or some data that might be currently being held in hard copies, maybe that is being collected currently through manual processes. So that data has to be evaluated, then also validated to make sure that it can be then migrated or transferred to the new database that will accommodate NSS system itself. Then, yeah, the other critical activity is that after all this is done, then we need to then, of course, go into the actual system design and also system development. So, of course, the systems, like I earlier mentioned, should be able to help and have components across the entire sanitation service chain. Then the other critical activity is to make sure that the system is able to be interoperable, rather should be able to be integrated with existing internal as well as external systems within the utility, as well as those that are being used by other external stakeholders, such as the regulators, for sake of seamless sharing information and also facilitating for effective reporting. Then, of course, the other activities also to improve and enhance data collection. There should be some sort of mobile applications that will be designed as part of the system that will help seamless and also efficient data collection and as well as validation before it's finally uploaded into the database. So various applications are being proposed, for example, that will be used by PTM chairs, FSTP operators, as well as maybe builders that will be involved in construction of toilets and containment systems. Yeah, then the other activities is, of course, as you might be aware, post-system implementation support is also important in terms of capacity building and also training of the staff, and also the overall support towards the change management that have to come together with the new system, making sure that everybody is kept up to speed and updated on what the system is all about and how they can go about to use it in their day-to-day tasks and activities that they need to do. Yeah, so in terms of the implementation stages, the first stage, as of course being proposed in the generic 𝗀𝗧 is the inception phase. Of course, this stage is much more like I mentioned, making sure that we detail the system requirements, of course, drilling them down to the local context, and also the specific requirements that the utility would want to have included in the system. But of course, not only focusing on the utility itself, but also speaking to other various key stakeholders and external stakeholders that are likely going to be impacted by the system and also are expected to interact in some way with the system. Then, of course, design the process flows. Of course, the system functionality is also being sure that we detail to the core the system architecture itself. And then, of course, at the end, put all these things together into a system design and definition document, which then can be shared with all the various stakeholders for them to sign it off, to say, okay, this document represents what we feel like the system should be able to do. Once that is done, then of course the second stage, the next stage will be that now the system developer will go into designing the system and also carrying out the required system upgrades in terms of the database upgrades to be able to accommodate NSS data systems and also the database itself. And of course, the third stage is the development and deployment of the NSS data system. So yeah, after all that is done, then you have to develop the system and then deploy it to make sure that then it's being used by the intended end users. Then after that, of course, is the post-system implementation support, which is in terms of change management support, capacity building to the utility staff and other external parties, as well as stakeholders will be entirely using the system. Then as part of the system, of course, like I mentioned, from the outcomes or the inputs that we got from the workshop that we had in Saka, the 𝗀𝗧 proposes a system architecture of how this NSS system should be able to function and the key functionality that's supposed to have, including the types of data that's supposed to be collected and also stored. So this figure here or this diagram just gives like a brief synopsis or summary of this proposed system architecture. So the first point to note that is the system, of course, proposes to have components that will be able to help the utility manage operations across the sanitation system. So we're going to have a component on capture and containment. It proposes a component on collection and transportation, a component to manage treatment aspects, a component that will manage reuse and disposal. And of course, at the end, we also have the M&E component. Of course, as you know, it's important at the end of the day to ensure that whatever that we're collecting is then being translated into useful insights or reporting either to the regulator or feeding into the national reporting systems that are feeding them into regional reports such as the SDGs and the like. Yeah, then under that, of course, we have the sub-processes, of course, that are being proposed in terms of, for example, under containment capture and construction. This, of course, is trying to entail the fact that we collect specific information that are related to all the sanitation containment systems that are existing within the city. Yeah, so you collect all the information that's related to that in terms of the customer, who the owner of the containment facility is, what sort of properties the facility is sitting on, and all the technical aspects related to that containment facility. Then, of course, at collection and transportation, here, of course, is trying to manage the collection and emptying and transportation business of the NSS service chain. So here, of course, things like service provider registration is important. Of course, monitoring the performance of the service providers in terms of how they are doing with meeting, in terms of meeting the KPIs that have been set for service provision is also important. And then, of course, there's also, they need to make sure that we also capture complaints, customer complaints with regards to the service provision, for the sake of getting feedback to inform continuous improvement in how the service is being provided. Then under treatment, of course, it's just to manage the overall treatment process, like the receiving of the fecal sludge at the treatment facility, recording the volumes that have been delivered, making sure that we have proper information of where this sludge is coming from, and of course also maybe providing a platform upon which the treatment operator will be able to, of course, view for the treatment costs in terms of dumping fees, or rather FSTP entry fees. And at aid reuse and resource recovery, of course, just to, of course, track what sort of reuse products are being produced from the treatment plant. Also maybe manage how they are being disposed of, or how they are being sold, maybe to those that would like to use them either for land application or as a manure. Then under that, of course, we have now the data entities that are going to feed into all these different pieces, of course, which is like the NSS toilets details, the customer details, the volumes, the FSTP entry records, the vehicles that are being used by the service providers, the details of the licenses that they're using, and all these other things. So this is just like an overview of the proposed system architecture. But of course, the details are part of the terms of reference, where we'll put them together in a system requirements and specification table that you'll be able to look into to get the actual details of all these different pieces. Yeah, so in terms of the expected outcomes, after, of course, implementing all these activities, we expect that you get as a first deliverable, which is the system definition report at the inception phase. Then, of course, you could also get some sort of a data or data conversion and validation report that details how the consultant has evaluated existing NSS data within the utility or municipality, and how then it's going to be migrated to the new system. Then, of course, the third deliverable is, of course, the NSS data systems itself with the associated applications. And then, of course, the other one is to make sure that after all the system is developed, it should be able to be integrated to the existing internal systems within the utility, as well as other important external systems that are being used by key stakeholders. And of course, the fifth deliverable is the capacity building, and also maybe final completion report after implementation. Yeah, so what have we been able to do post the development of this standard or generic TOR? The first thing that we've been able to do, of course, is to put all this together, the finalized TOR, which of course we've uploaded on the WSH Data Labs website, so you can have access to it. There's a QR code that has been provided in the slide there. You can scan it, then it will take you direct to these resources, where you can download them and acquaint yourself with the details of the terms of reference. Then beyond that, of course, this terms of reference has already been used by Lusaka Water to inform the development of the NSS module that they're trying to develop as part of their utility ERP. So we are currently, of course, as Dev-Afrique, working with them under this initiative to support the development of this NSS. And we are happy to say that all the activities or all the initiation of this project have been based on these terms of reference. And of course, there have been a lot of the adaptations that Lusaka Order has made to make sure that this tour then suits to its specific local needs, and also it speaks to the context that they would want to develop this NSS module. That will be part of the larger ERP. Then, of course, after that, we are also making sure that we are documenting the experiences and lessons from the Lusaka process. So, and then at the end of the day, we would want to share these various knowledge management products from this Lusaka process to be able to inform other utilities within sub-Saharan Africa who would like to embark on a similar process, and of course show them how best they can go about maybe developing an NSS module that speaks to their specific needs. So yeah, I'll end there. I think that's what I had. So at this point, I'll pass it on to my colleague Shuko to guide us on the next steps of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Kapanda. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Namaka, and thank you, Kapanda, for the lovely and elaborate presentation. I think it's been exciting to be part of this process and to also learn about the current state of data systems for non-sewered sanitation across sub-Saharan Africa, and to also learn about the tools dashboard, which highlights and spotlights various tools that were landscaped as part of that broader landscape. And I think very exciting on the tools dashboard is this new feature where stakeholders could add tools that they are currently using, just so that others could learn from that. I think it's super exciting if the broader stakeholder group could already start adding those tools and interacting with the dashboard. But even more exciting is the translation of these recommendations and outputs into more tangible and practical next steps. I think this is very exemplary. We have seen this TR document, which is super exciting, that any utility, municipality can download. I think Kapanda has preempted the different sections that it has. It has all the specifications, requirements, and it provides a generic overview of what the non-sewered sanitation module development could look like, just so that utilities are not reinventing the wheel, but this acts as a base document for you to be able to adapt in whatever context that you're working in. So it has all the high level and critical elements that you can then go on to adapt. And I think the two versions are very exciting. We have one in PDF and one in Word that has placeholders for you to just replace where it says utility municipality with your utility municipality name. And so I think this has been a very exciting story that you've told, from the landscape all the way to the TOR, which is addressing the gap and currently being adapted within Lusaka Water and Sanitation Company, to show an example and learning of how the TOR document could be adapted within the local context. With that being said, we would be taking a 5-minute break just so that all our attendees could stretch, grab coffee, and come back in 5 minutes for the Q&A session. Our presenters would be ready and geared to answer questions. So super excited and looking forward to the Q&A session. See you all in 5 minutes. Thank you all. I hope everyone took a minute to stretch, grab water, grab coffee, tea, and join us back. Welcome, everyone. We have covered a lot of ground, presenting the non-sewered sanitation landscape assessment report findings from sub-Saharan Africa, presenting the data and operation management tools dashboard, and the non-sewered sanitation module terms of references, which you can access on the WSH Data Labs website, or using the QR codes that were shared throughout the course of the presentation. Now I would like to open the floor for discussion, questions, and I would invite our presenters to join me. And please, for those with unstable internet, feel free to have your questions posted in the chat. But for those that can speak, I would encourage you to raise your hand, and we would have you ask your questions. And I know there are a couple of questions already in the chat, but just to open up, if any of the questions posted, if anyone would like to just raise their hand and ask their question. I've seen a question, and please forgive me if I don't pronounce the name correctly. Rent, I've seen a couple of questions. Would you, 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, would you want to come off mute and ask your questions? Okay, I would read 𝗕's question. And then I've seen 𝗦𝗫𝗶𝗁 has already raised the hand. I would have you ask your question, 𝗦𝗫𝗶𝗁. 𝗕 was asking whether the TORs were a standard. Do I understand you well? Have you developed a standardized terms of reference with which municipalities utilities can initiate development procurement of proprietary software solutions on the market for non-sewered sanitation systems? Found the dashboard online, and the TOR is not yet. So, 𝗕, I think the last point that I mentioned answers this question. The TOR is a generic best terms of reference, just so that utilities do not have to reinvent the wheel in going through the process of convening stakeholders and developing the best TOR. So the best TOR is one that could be adapted within the context that the utility municipality is working. It has placeholders, and so there are clauses or sections that are pretty generic and standard, but also some that are context specific that the utility could address. And for the TOR, they are online as well. When you go to the drop down, there's the on the initiatives. Okay, perfect.
Great, nice work. Thanks.
Thank you. I would pass the mic to 𝗦𝗫𝗶𝗁 for questions.
Hi, Shuko. Thank you. It's good to be back on the webinar as a viewer as well. So I just have a quick question regarding the dashboard. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So just a quick question, Nika, because I saw like it's a very wonderful initiative and idea to bring all the different data systems and platforms into a singular, interactive dashboard where researchers can just go and find what they need. But my main question is like, what is the data validation and like collection mechanisms for the system? Because I believe like these systems will be spread across different regions, across different jurisdictions and different technical teams as well. So is there any mechanism that's been developed to, continuously add, update and validate the data so that the dashboard is alive, because in our experience, we've faced multiple problems where eventually after the baseline data is set up, then eventually the data dies down, the activities, they tend to cease away. So what are the plans for that? And I think that's about it from my end. That's the main question. Thank you.
Thank you. I would pass it on to the presenter for that section, Namaka.
Thank you very much, Shuko and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. So when it comes to data source and verification mechanisms for the dashboard, I mentioned earlier during my presentation that a lot of the tools were identified during the non-sewered sanitation landscape assessment. Again, Dev-Afrique has an extensive network of WSH advisors within sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. So for this particular mapping exercise, the tools and their functionalities were verified by these WSH advisors. So they have expertise in the different countries where these tools were being pulled in from. And they were the ones who did the assessment of the tools using the critical success factors. And moving forward, as we receive more requests to add more tools, we are also going to pull in our WSH advisors across the network to speak to the different tools that are being added to the dashboard to help in the assessment and evaluation. Beyond that, we also conducted iterative review processes with the system owners to ensure that the data we were capturing within the dashboard is accurate and reliable. And we also had like iterative review process in even summits, some of the conferences we attended, we presented a prototype of the dashboard to the WSH stakeholders that attended, got their feedback and implemented some of those feedback within the dashboard. So that pretty much answers your question. And you mentioned the IMIS, 2 instances of the IMIS. Yeah, so one IMIS is IMIS that is implemented in Dakar, and the other is for Zambia. It's currently still in gray because it's still under development. But as soon as that implementation is finalized, we will review on our end, and you can see the critical success factors that the tool speaks to. I hope that answers your question. And yes, sorry, one more thing. When it comes to data management, we have a dedicated data management team here within Dev-Afrique that's tasked with handling that dashboard. So as the dashboard matures, they'll be responsible for ensuring that it's still like up to date and still capturing information accurately. Thanks.
Thank you, Namaka. And I think through your presentation, I also heard the new feature that you mentioned launching, which allows for the actual tools owner to add a particular tool and be able to edit existing information, which gives them the ability to continuously verify and validate that the insights that are within the dashboard are accurate. So thank you, Namaka and team. We'll move to the next question. I don't see any hand up, and so I would check through the chat. I see there was a question from John saying, thank you. I would like to hear your thoughts on the level of stakeholder participation in sanitation projects. Why do you think stakeholder involvement in sanitation initiatives is generally lower compared to water projects, and what steps can be taken to improve this? So I would pass that question to our presenters. Anyone would like to take that? Maybe Grace?
All right. I think that's a very important observation, because in most countries across board, by the way, that's the situation that you find water projects are given. They're given the budgets. In fact, like in our case in Kenya, we don't even have a line budget. It's the ministry level for sanitation, which is quite sad. So I would say the shift can only begin from the top. So we need to have governments taking a deliberate effort that sanitation should not come as a second thought to water. We need to see sanitation for what it is, that is actually sanitation. So that then from the top, in terms of policy, we have policy documents for sanitation, we have regulations for sanitation. Even at the institutional level, we need to have units for sanitation. And I'm glad, because utilities and municipalities are now moving in that direction, where you find utilities now have a department for water and also a department for sanitation. It's no longer an afterthought. So I would say it's a whole mindset shift, but more importantly, in terms of policy, in terms of regulations, and even in terms of investments. I've noticed some funders have also started taking the direction where even in a massive water project, there's an apportionment of a budget for sanitation. I think that is very important, that sanitation is mainstreamed, and not just mainstreamed in water projects, and as it should actually be considered as a key area. Otherwise, if we continue with the way things have been, then nothing much will change. But I'm happy that across board we noticed that has been acknowledged, and governments now are taking steps towards making sanitation stand by itself. Yeah, including even the capacities, and actually even in terms of behavior change and awareness. that is something that needs to even start as early as in schools. So the same way we have hygiene practices in schools, I think sanitation units on sanitation also need to be onboarded all the way from primary school, high schools, and the universities. We need to have curriculums also adopting sanitation, and not, because I remember like in our days when we were doing the water, civil engineering, water was a key thematic area, but when it came to sanitation, the key thematic area that we were focusing on was seaward sanitation. So we need to have sanitation as a holistic part of the curriculum. Yeah, I think those are my observations.
Thanks, Grace. Does any other panelists want to chime in?
Yeah, maybe just to say that I think generally also there's just low visibility, advocacy, and awareness creation around sanitation programs and projects. So I think that also leads to low participation among the would-be stakeholders that need to be engaged. So I think we need to raise the bar when it comes to general awareness creation and advocacy around sanitation programs and projects.
Thanks, Grace. Thanks, Kapanda. And I think one exciting thing, insight reading the report was how you also link the importance of ensuring that sanitation is embedded in the broader development agenda, right? Like linking it right now to climate change, adaptation and mitigation. So because there's already evidence showing that there's a significant linkage, and so having it embedded in that broader agenda sort of starts to drive the necessity to have more emphasis and inclusion of sanitation. So exciting insights from that point. I would move to Betty and then Just, so you can both ask your questions, and then would allow the panelists to respond after you have both asked your questions. So Betty, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shuko, and thank you to all presenters for the presentations. My question is to Grace. There was quite a shocking data analysis presented, which is more than 80% of communities rely on non-sewered sanitation, and about 16% in sub-Saharan are connected to sewers. So is there a breakdown per country? Because I don't think this is the case, especially I'm speaking specifically to Kenya. So is there a breakdown of this data for non-sewered and sewered sanitation? And when you're talking about non-sewered sanitation, the percentage being more than 80, is there a consideration of safe sanitation, or is it just generally you don't have a connection to sewer, so automatically you're in the spectrum of being in the non-sewered space? Is there now that clear landmark that yes, you're not connected to a sewer, but the sanitation system that you have is actually a safe and dignified sanitation system? Two is kind of the second question is, but yeah, let's first tackle that, and then once I remember, I can ask the second.
Okay.
Thank you, Betty. We can have Just ask his question, and then we can have the two answered at the same time. Just?
Yes, thank you, Shuko and the team. It was a very interesting presentation and great work. So I'm moderating one of the community of practices of asset management. So my question is a bit in line with the asset management perspective. You've looked at all these all these countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and I was wondering about the uniformity of like the main work processes around non-sewered sanitation. So if you look to the value chain, are the authorities that are responsible for those main processes, are they comparable within the different countries? I also written down my question. I'm not an expert, but I would imagine that a lot of the pit latrines are private, and maybe not in all places the government takes on the responsibility of maintaining, emptying, or treating the pit latrines. So I was wondering if you found any uniformity between the countries, and if you look to your like architecture of the system that you proposed in the TOR, do you think that's like valid for all countries, or that it should be in some line adapted to the work processes of specific countries?
Thank you, Just. And Betty?
Yes. Remember the second part was I've not seen a clearly demarcated role for the private sector. We know the role of the government being the mandate holder through their different state departments, but what role then does the private sector come into play in this project? Yeah.
Thank you. I would allow the panelists to answer the questions, and then I would have Alan ask his question after that. So Grace Kapanda Namaka, over to you.
All right. I think I will go first and I'll deal with Betty's questions. I would say, Betty, these figures that you've seen, we've presented, we were getting them from the GMP. So for a clear breakdown, or even in terms of the figures zeroing to the sanitation ladder, the GMP is a very good source of information. And for the Kenyan case, actually, figures are even lower, because for the regulated areas of service, we have seaward sanitation at 16%. So meaning, but now when you go beyond the regulated areas of service, we only find that seaward sanitation is only at 10%. So seaward is anyone that is using a networked sanitation service. Yeah. So then the rest, meaning the 84% then, or even the 80%, then would be using non-seaward sanitation. And of course, this non-seaward sanitation is in the different categories. Some of the non-seaward sanitation is actually safely managed. We have basic, we have limited. Yes. So all those categories are there, just that we are saying these are people, whether it is safely managed or not, these are people that will require services because they are not using networked infrastructure. So they require FSM services. Yeah. So then the other thing, when the role of the private sector, in most of these countries, actually, the people who are within the FSM, who are offering the FSM services, that is the transportation, emptying, and the treatment, in most cases, the private sector, not treatment, just the emptying, actually, the construction of toilets, the emptying and transportation is by the private sector. But because we were looking not necessarily at the roles, we were looking at the data, how data is collected, how it is analyzed, and how it is used along the sanitation value chain, then there was a major weakness we actually noticed, a major challenge. The fact that, yes, the emptying and transportation is by the private sector, but the connection between the private sector and the mandate holder, who are either municipalities or public utilities, is actually a challenge in terms of data submission. So, and that's where there's tools like 𝗬𝗏𝗏 and SaniTracker are coming to fill that gap. Because yes, the mandate holder, who is a utility, still is accountable to the regulator, but they can only rely on the private sector for the data, because the private sector is actually the one doing the job on the ground. So one of the things that we actually recommended, and one of the things I would acknowledge that the regulators are doing, is to ensure that there's a mechanism, delegated mechanism, that is working between this private sector and the public utilities, so that yes, they're given the work, yes, it's delegated responsibilities from the municipalities and the utilities to provide the services, but also they're held accountable by submitting data to the mandate holders. Yeah. Then going to the the second person that asked the question on the public authorities, I think it is very clear. And actually, if you go to the report, you'll see that the responsibilities are quite, it's clear. There are some major categories of responsibilities at the household. In most cases, the responsibility for containment at household level belongs to the household. So other than maybe in public areas, the public sanitation facilities, are those ones that in most cases are probably by the municipalities or the utilities. But in most of these countries, there's no place where we found that the household, probably the utility is responsible for the household sanitation facility. No, in most cases, this household sanitation facility is the responsibility of the household. But then when it comes to emptying and transportation, this is where you found that in most cases it's the private sector who are doing it. But in some other cases, we also have the utility utilities and the municipalities also doing it, though most of them are moving away because of the fleet management issues. So they are moving away from them directly providing the emptying and transportation services, other than maybe for public institutions, and delegating that to the private sector. Then when it came to the treatment phase of the sanitation value chain, this is now why the responsibility again goes back to the utility or the municipality. Why? Because of the assets required there are capital intensive. So it was in very rare occasions that you found the private sector actually doing the treatment phase of the sanitation value chain. So, but in some cases we have a few private sector, but I would say a few private entities who are in that, like there's a Sanitation in Naivasha. So, but at very small scale. So I hope that answers. But the authorities across board are similar. Yeah. So maybe over to my counterpart, Kapanda.
Yeah, thanks very much. So I think, as Grace has said, I think, the responsibilities really vary. So when it comes to the terms of reference, I think the question was on the system architecture, whether it speaks to what is obtained on the ground. So I think for us, we would like to think of the 𝗀𝗏 to be more of a guide, unlike like a prescriptive document. So that's the reason why I think the utility and municipality have to make sure that they look through that document as a guide, and then they should be able to customize it or update it, or rather adapt it to their specific context that they are working with it. So that's the first thing. And of course, the 𝗀𝗏 itself, again, of course, covers various facets and also aspects that, of course, you would think they are required or are critical when it comes to managing the overall national sanitation service chain. So I've given it a broad range of all these things that they need to be taken into perspective. But of course, when it comes to the actual things that the utility have to look at, they will need to take into consideration their local context and see how they can adapt the 𝗀𝗏 to speak to their specific needs and also requirements.
And yeah, just to add on to what Grace said concerning Betty's questions, Betty, it's not surprising that you are skeptical about the numbers that were presented. But again, like Grace said, these are GMP figures. But it also speaks to one thing we noticed during the landscape assessment, which is that data quality from the utility/municipality level, so the local level, is very poor. And remember that this data feeds all the way up to the national and global level. So if the data coming from the lower level is not even so trustworthy, it means that some of the figures, or maybe even all of the figures that are being quoted in this national and global monitoring platforms, may not actually reflect the true situation of things on the ground. Just wanted to put that out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Kapanda, and thank you, Namaka. I am being cognizant of time, and I see there are a lot of questions, but I would allow Alan to ask questions, and then would have the panelists respond, and then we could dive into wrapping up. Alan?
Okay, thank you, moderator. My name is Alan Sogomo, senior engineer working for North Rift Valley Waterworks Development Agency, one of the state parastatals working in terms of water service provision based here in Eldoret, in Kenya. And my question is to the panelists. And I was following through the presentation, and since the baseline mapping has emerged to be one of the greatest bottleneck in understanding and planning for the non-sewered sanitation systems, that is NSS services, I hope you agree with me that the sector wider efforts, especially in future investments, should prioritize especially geospatial sanitation mapping as the first step. And if that is our priority, and if so, that is it. So how can we ensure that this initial mapping effort is standardized and scalable and also integrated into our long-term data sanitation systems? As you are all aware that if we allow all these utilities to do their own, mapping, we might end up having systems that have, we might end up having gaps in terms of also tracking the progress from the beginning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan. Any reaction from the panelists? I see Kapanda came off mute.
Yes. So yeah, I think as Grace mentioned, I think in her presentation, the fact that I think there's lack of not many utilities across the region have conducted this baseline sanitation mapping to understand what the sanitation systems within their cities look like. So I think, of course, the first step for you to be able to have a comprehensive database is to conduct this baseline mapping exercise. And if you look into the system requirements, functionality and specifications document that we've put together, or the table that we've put together, I think we've come up with clear key performance indicators, for example, at containment, capture containment stage, and also what sort of data needs to be collected to create a database, for example, for containment facilities in a city. That would be critical for managing service provision across the sanitation service chain. So probably that would be the first starting point to look into. And if all the utilities can customize maybe their data collection efforts to meet the requirements that have been put there, then perhaps we could have some sort of standardization across the critical data elements that need to be collected. But of course, not to mention that we've prescribed, like, for example, a standard mapping questionnaire that the utilities can use. That we've not done, but I think what we've put in terms of the KPIs and the critical data sets and the decisions that are required at capture and containment would go a long way in informing, for example, a city that would like to conduct like a baseline sanitation mapping exercise. So like for the case of Lusaka, for example, the utility already had already done like this baseline sanitation mapping exercise, and the database that was created will be then integrated into this larger NSS module, and then will be used for continuous management for service provision, but also make sure that the database is continuously updated so that it doesn't become obsolete with time, and also then requiring the utility maybe to conduct another baseline after a longer period of time, after some time period has elapsed. So for that's I think what I would say about the issue of baseline mapping exercise.
Thank you, Kapanda. Does any other panelists want to chime in less than 1 minute? Great. Thank you all for an amazing and engaging Q&A session. We've come to the end of the Q&A session. However, feel free to leave questions in the comments. The presenters will keep responding to questions in the chat. And so if you leave your questions there, would have the presenters respond to them. And we are super excited to have presented the Non-Sewered Sanitation Data Systems Landscape Report, the Data and Operation Management Systems Dashboard, which we hope that all of you on the webinar will start to interact with and add the various tools that you are using within your jurisdictions and work, and also the TOR document that you can download. And remember, it's not a prescriptive document, it's a best document that provides a starting point for you to adapt within the context of your jurisdictions. As next steps, we will be sharing the recording of today's webinar and summary of the takeaways, which would include the video and a few next steps, and a link to the WSH Data Labs website, just so that those that were not able to access it would be able to find it in a centralized place. And we strongly encourage you to visit the WSH Data Labs website and interact with the report, the dashboard, and the TOR document. And we are consistently seeking collaborations to ensure that the data systems work is effective and reaches a wider audience. And so even your feedback would be highly valued on some of the work. And then keep an eye on further communications. We have some exciting activities coming up from our partners ESAWAS and GWOPA, and so just look out for the communication around that. So continue to interact with our learning material, and don't forget to participate in this webinar series. We'll continue to spotlight the data and operation management systems being used, but beyond that is also to embed some form of capacity building elements around data systems, just so that beyond learning about the systems, you also can live with tangible skills and best practices around the use of data systems. A big thank you to our speakers and partners, and most importantly to you all, our participants, for joining us today. Your engagement is critical to advancing data-driven solutions, and we hope to see you in the coming webinar. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Goodbye.